Welcome to Foreign Object episode number Tiga. What is Tiga? Tiga is the number 3 in the Indonesian language, so don't ever say I never helped broaden your horizons. Today's guest is a dead set legend. For me, the most fascinating among us are those who have tried to squeeze every last drop of jizz out of life.
Continue.
Okay.
Just continue.
With that said, Sean Kent is literally covered in life's glory juice. He's a multiple award-winning stand-up comic and starred on A&E's unscripted comedy Modern Dads. He's also stared God twice in the face and won. Once as an addict and another as a survivor of stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. Sean and I have been long-time Twitter friends, but today is the first time we've ever spoken. So I'm as nervous and excited as I was the first time I danced naked for the Russian ballet. Mafia, whatever. And with that said, I'd like to welcome Sean Kent to the program. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I'm a little worried about what this means for our Twitter friendship that we've taken it to the next level.
It can only go downhill from here. You know that.
Yep.
Mate, you're like all comics. You're well versed in politics and all things society and culture. And today being election day, I guess that's probably the best place to jump off from. So now that it looks likely that the Republican, and I know you've just sent me a message just to say you've come back from the polling booth.
Yeah.
And now that it looks like the Republicans will take the Senate, I can't see it going any other way. Do you feel that the GOP will resist the temptation to go full retard?
I'm sorry. You mean, do you think they'll stop going full retard? Like, when are they? I was talking about this earlier. I'm not super concerned about them taking the Senate because they don't have the White House. And when they take both houses, and first of all, we had the Senate for a long time and we didn't really do shit with it. When I say we, I mean the Democrats, which I'm not a Democrat. I'm an independent, but that's usually who I vote for.
Yep.
But what's going to happen is the media is going to make a huge hash out of this. They're like, oh my God, the Republicans took over the Senate. Obama's a lame duck. This is crazy. It's not like he was getting a lot done already anyway.
Yeah.
And what'll happen, because the country doesn't like it when one party controls everything, this will only play more into the Democrats' hands when they elect our next president.
Absolutely, and I've said this publicly quite often that the best thing that could happen for Hillary 2016 is for the Republicans to take the Senate, because America will get to see how nutty or crazy the Republican Party has gone in full display for the next 2 years, because now they're going to have to write legislation.
The Republicans are really good at talking about how much the government sucks. What they're actually terrible at is governing. They're terrible at it because they don't believe in government. How can you govern when you don't believe in it?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And then they spent the last 6 years trying to destroy government from within, which is
just 6 years. I think since about 1980.
Yeah. I guess once that white boy from Alabama got into office in the early 90s, that really turned the Christian right upside down. But for me, being in the US, this is the first time I've been in the US as a permanent resident for a national election, and what I've found quite extraordinary is how this election is based on nothing. This is an election based purely on infantile emotionalism and fear, driven largely by Ebola and ISIS. What do you say to that?
I say, why should elections change? That's why should we try to have an election based on new stuff? We're used to reactionalism and narcissism and fear. We love it. Well, that's what our politicians love. That's what they love to do.
Yeah.
Is it more intense for you to kind of see it up close rather than sort of monitor it from afar?
Well, I've covered national elections. I've covered the 08 and 012 election from the comfort and confines of my villa in Indonesia. So this is the first time that I've been up close and personal to the crazy. And it is crazy set to high. It's extraordinary that what I find really frustrating, and I'm glad you said you're an independent, because I'm extremely liberal, but I cannot stand the Democratic Party. I believe at every opportunity that they're given to prove that they have some chutzpah, to prove that they have some testicular fortitude, they prove that they're spineless, coward, weaklings. And all these Democratic governors and senators are running in these close races who are running away from Obama's record. Now let's remember that if you're going to look at Obama's record on its own, without getting too sophisticated on it, unemployment's at its lowest rate in 6 years. Gas prices are at their lowest in 5. The deficit has been cut by 65%, which is the fastest deficit cut spending since World War II. Inflation is almost at zero. And the rich, who are campaigning hardest against Obama, have quadrupled their wealth. So I don't
Right.
so I don't understand why these, weak-ass Democrats, they just fold like, Four Seasons deck chairs. What do you say?
Well, because nationally, elections are one thing, but locally, they tend to be quite different. And so you have people running in states where Obama might be much more hated than he is nationally, and it doesn't matter what he does. His numbers are not going to go up as far as approval ratings in states like North Carolina or Virginia. People are just going to hate him. I mean, you can tell them all those facts all you want, and they'll say, he's destroying America. I mean, I don't know if it's like this in Australia. I always, in my utopian worldview, having visited Australia twice and seeing it's a lovely country and met a lot of Australians, I always assume it's like perfectly rational over there, or at least not as batshit crazy as it is here.
Well, I put that down to the fact, and I've written about this extensively, I put this down to the fact that we have mandatory voting in Australia. And where you have mandatory voting, you get rid of the wings or the fringes or the fringe element, because everybody's got to turn out to vote. But in America, when you have voluntary voting, political operatives, they just throw red meat to the base. It's all about activating the base, which is the fringe elements. And in the media, then, the mainstream media, the cable media, and then, well, they, just pour fuel onto that fire.
It's really crazy here. It's like some sort of, when you watch Fox News, it's like some sort of futuristic movie where they're like, oh my God, in like 100 years, will our media really be this bad? Like when you watch RoboCop, like the old RoboCop, and you saw that, you know what I mean? That sort of like smiley, sort of gleeful sadist.
Yes.
Yeah. It's kind of like that. When I watch Fox News, I sort of have to, and I don't watch it really often, but when I do catch it, I just pretend it's satire.
Do you really believe? I listen to somebody like Bill O'Reilly, and let's face it, he's no dummy. I think someone like Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity probably are more on the dummy side of intellectual, but Bill O'Reilly is certainly no dummy, and he's probably a quasi-intellectual. But do you really believe he says that, he believes in the things he says, or he just knows commercially, he has this illiterate, white, fearful base, which is terrified of everything foreign, he just throws them what they want to hear?
I think there's a part of him, like a little tiny part of him that he works actively to kill, that knows he's full of shit. Right? But it's kind of like OJ. OJ knew he was guilty, but convinced himself he wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that's how Bill O'Reilly is with the shit he says. I really do. Because he's also like a serial sexual harasser, and only people who have a high amount of a good degree of facility with self-delusion, which is, by the way, that's like an American specialty, for the good and for ill, can get away with what he does. And I mean that when I say like self-delusion, because, people here, we have like these crazy dreams and we make them come true. And it takes like a certain amount of self-delusion, to make some of our crazy dreams come true.
Well, not just
but at the same time,
not
just, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, not just self-delusion. Jim Jeffries, who's an Australian stand-up comic who I'm sure you're familiar with, he said on stage just recently, America, number 37 in math, but number 1 in confidence.
Yes. I don't know if it's like this in other countries, but I've lived in England for a little while and visited Australia.
Yep.
A couple times, and some other, I've been on like 5 continents. I've never seen countries that go around saying they're as awesome as often as we do. We're what we're probably the most awesome at? Believing we're awesome.
Yeah, I believing that you're awesome. A healthy degree of nationalism or patriotism is fine, but I find the American strain of nationalism so unwilling to self-introspect.
Well,
Uh,
I think we mistake patriotism for nationalism because they're totally different things, and
yeah,
that's when it gets scary because that's what the Germans did. You know, really. I mean, if you want to get down to it,
yeah, yeah.
is patriotism and nationalism are two totally separate things. One of them is super scary, and one of them is appropriate because patriotism is, as Mark Twain said, supporting your government or supporting your country all the time, supporting your government when it deserves it. Nationalism is just like everybody else sucks. We're awesome no matter what we do.
And where would you believe the middle of the American electorate is positioned? Electorate.
Well, I think that we're our politicians are very good because it serves their interests, and the media is very good at serving at this, at making people believe that America's awesome, even when people here have it pretty terrible.
Well,
A
and
lot of times, I mean, there's homeless people in Canada with better health care than most Americans. I'll put it that way.
yeah, but unfortunately poverty doesn't play well for ratings on cable television news. But I've written frustratingly about this. Even the liberal media, and you turn on MSNBC, and someone like Chris Matthews, who I think is one of the most politically sophisticated and insightful individuals that is on TV, but just purely from a political animal point of view. But even he, when we're talking about ISIS or the rise of the Islamic State in Iraq, he puts his arms in the air, his hands in the air, and says, "Why do they hate us? I don't understand. What have we done?" And it's, you know, you know, and we're now in what the 12th or the 13th year since 9/11, and we still are unwilling as a country to look into the reasons which fuel such hatred of the West, and it's our occupation of these foreign countries, our arms for oil programs, which keeps these countries in permanent economic classes while we, foster and patron these autocratic regimes. But we still.
Well, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so where you don't see that in the media. You'll hear nothing about our vital interests. You'll hear the terms vital interests and natural interests and security interests, but it's never said by its name. It's oil. So I believe the media in this country, the mainstream media, has really failed to live up to its creed or its ideal of being the fourth estate. There really is no, it's just they're basically just mouth, or microphones for the government or political parties.
Well, the media is not about being media; they're about ratings, and talking about how America sucks is not good for your ratings.
Not in the southern states.
No, I mean, really anywhere. It's like if you look at Fox News, one of the reasons they're so successful, they always have some sort of quasi-statist symbol, like some sort of flag flying, and even their base colors are red, white, and blue, and very bold, and things like that. And there's just all these sort of subtle cues that hey, we're America, and it's I mean, it's definitely like obviously the big cliche here is that the BBC tells the truth, but there's some truth to that. It really does. I mean, I was doing some shows overseas for the troops in Iraq, and it's funny. I was talking to this like Alabama-born like Marine, and he's like, "Man, I don't listen to Fox News. It's bullshit. I listen to the BBC." It's just
yeah. I find that a lot actually. A lot of guys that I've spoken to have returned from tours in Iraq and around here. They say the same thing. They listen to BBC and Al Jazeera.
Yeah. Al Jazeera tells the truth. It's really just agenda-free reporting, and the reason that is there's a sort of an evolution that the news went under. It originally it was meant to be a loss leader. You were required to have, and I'm talking about TV news, which is where most people get their news, I would assume. It was used to be a loss leader. In other words, to get like a license to broadcast, you had to have a certain amount of hours every week devoted towards the public good. That went away under Reagan. He got rid of that public good provision, and then the news became a profit division. And once the news became a profit division, it just all changed.
Yeah. And I guess in Australia, or in England, you've got the BBC, which is, a publicly funded channel. And in Australia, you've got the ABC, which is publicly funded. But you've got a conservative government in Australia, which is trying to, eradicate that and, make sure everything is owned by Rupert Murdoch. So we're certainly in Australia, we're following the path of the United States, sadly.
Yeah, it seems like you are. I mean, I haven't followed it too closely, but I do know that as you guys get more successful, you make the same mistakes we make. That's what it seems like. It seems like as people in Australia get more money or just a little more tied into the global economy or more creature comforts, because
Yeah.
that's what I think a lot of people in America mistake creature comforts for actually doing well.
Well, and this is why Russell Brand, the British comedian, talks about a revolution all the time, and I so want to buy into the idea of a revolution. So want to buy into the idea of breaking the two-party system and rising up and smashing the plutocratic or the oligarchic estate. But how do you do that? That's I'm torn between. I'm looking at my Twitter feed and I'm seeing all these celebrities and comedians saying get out the vote and all these political operatives get out the vote. But at the end of the day, what is it going to change? Because Obama has proved, for all of the good things he has done, admittedly, he's proven he hasn't been willing to change anything structurally with the political apparatus.
Yeah, and I think it starts with having an honest dialogue about what's going on in the country, and until our media does a better job, I mean, somebody's got to hold the politicians' feet to the fire, and right now, Obama's able to pose as somebody who's actually a different option, which he is. I mean, to say there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans is crazy, but he's just. I think what separates him is he's trying to do a little bit of good. While still giving the media to the corporations, or still giving the country to the corporations and the oligarchs, whereas the Republicans are just trying to fucking do no good. They don't care about the environment or anything like that. I mean, it's funny whenever they talk about Democrats and all the Democrat special interest money. You're like, well, who? And they're like, well, they get money from environmental groups.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I guess that's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
They ignore the fact where their scientists are getting funding from BP and Caltex.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And the media doesn't really, they don't call people on that. And then that starts with the anchors, too. They're not educated enough. They're just these rich sort of bubbleheads with good haircuts, or not even good haircuts in Chuck Todd's case. And, they just like, when somebody comes on and he says a bunch of bullshit, and Chris Matthews is totally guilty of this. They come on and they say a bunch of bullshit from one of their think tanks. They don't know that it's a think tank. We probably study more every day for this stuff than they do.
Well, and that's the thing. Journalism in this country today is all about access. And once you start questioning those in power, then you lose your access. And these guys don't want to lose their access to that. It's people refer to the bubble in DC as the village. And you have to speak in the same language as the village. You have to voice the same opinions which are shared in the village. And if you don't, you're cast as an outsider, which is what has happened to, I think, the most powerful voices in U.S. journalism. People like Chomsky and Chris Hedges and Glenn Greenwald.
Yeah, Chomsky, I mean, he's considered too radical to have on, but if you really wanted to have like a conservative and a liberal voice on TV, you wouldn't have a conservative and a moderate, which is what they always have. You'd have or a conservative from a think tank and an actor, because they love to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like they love to have Janine Garofalo and then Grover Norquist. Like she's going to be able to, outfact him or whatever. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I always think about change in the long run too. It seems like some things are getting worse, and then certainly social issues are getting a lot better in this country. So it's hard to say things are all bad, I guess.
What social issues are getting better?
Well, when I was younger here, you just didn't want to be out as a gay person because you couldn't. Your life would just suck. I mean, it'd be miserable. My dad used to, lead sit-ins on the drag here in Austin, Texas, so that black people could eat at the same restaurants. I mean, the idea, it was widely considered okay for segregation to exist in this country, and even beyond past that. I mean, until the Voting Rights Act was passed in 65, I mean, there was still wide-scale disenfranchisement of black people under sort of legal auspices, and or just straight up voter intimidation. And so things like that have gotten a lot better. And I mean, black people and white people marrying each other. We got a black president. It's Black people are looked up to in this country, and there's a lot of famous black. I mean, Oprah Winfrey, for God's sakes, I mean, that kind of shit didn't go on like 20, 30 years ago, and especially that if you look at gay people, and then not only that, like I think if you talk to young people in this country, they don't hate people and are not as afraid of people as we were growing up. And I was raised in Texas, so I wasn't necessarily fearful, but all the people I grew up around were, and you just don't see that as much.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Do you believe, but that racism in this country is being concealed a little bit better through structural or institutionalized racism? So,
Well, okay, I think that people are just not as racist as they used to be. I think racism is still a huge problem, but it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be that racism is still as bad as it used to be. They're just better at hiding it. I think that the judicial system is still highly racist. The job market is still highly racist, things like that. But day-to-day life, it's not as bad as it used to be. I mean, that's just clear because look at our president. That just would not have happened. I mean, when Jesse Jackson ran for president, it was a fucking joke. You know what I mean? He was a token. It was like, oh, a black guy actually ran for president. That was like a huge novelty that it was sort of a serious guy. You could sort of almost maybe sort of think about maybe not voting for, but maybe think about voting for.
but when I just remembered Zach Galifianakis when he had President Obama on his show, The Two Ferns, and he asked Obama, "So, what's it like to be the last Black American president?"
And I don't think that's because he's black. I think it's because we've done such a good job disenfranchising young black people that the talent pool is not as big as it used to be. But I think a man's going to have a hard time getting elected president in the next election cycle. I think it's interesting because I've been living here for 40 years, and when I was a kid, I didn't think things got any better. And now that I've lived long enough, I've actually seen things get better. And I even have a joke about this. It's not because we did anything like we recycled or we did anything like that or we marched. It's because shitty old people died, right? And once you're a terrible dead old person in this country, you don't get to vote anymore. And that's the best law we have, because then things get better. And Martin Luther King said it. He said the arc of time is long, but it bends towards justice. You can translate that to things will get better. You're going to have to wait for shitty old people to die.
Yeah, and the millennials, I guess, are the great hope. They seem to be, they're less religious. They're more open to anything, I guess, foreign. And it seems to be, and that's what the Republican Party is. It's hanging on to this white minority politics. It's the last stand of the Confederacy. Is that how you see it?
Absolutely, yeah. And the reason they're so noisy right now is because they know that. It's like when in that movie Aliens, when like the aliens would die and they would scream, Yeah. It's like that. You're watching like a dirty, disgusting thing die, and it's just making all this horrible racket as it does it. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why they get angrier and angrier. And I don't think a Republican is electable nationally anymore. For instance, to talk about progress, they're too wacky on social issues. It's just they have to run too far to the right to get the nomination, and then. When that person tries to run nationally, everybody goes, "No, dude, you're fucking nuts, dude. You're a little batshit. We're not voting for you because you think a husband should be able to rape his wife and whatever else he wants to do and have slaves, right? It's like
you'll call the White House niggerhead in the case of President Rick Perry.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's not okay anymore.
So as an independent and looking towards 2016, what do you make of the Clintons, and specifically, what do you make of Hillary?
I'm voting for Elizabeth Warren.
Amen. I knew we were on the same page on that.
Yeah, I can't vote. I can't vote for her. But listen, if it's Hillary running versus a Republican, I'll vote for Hillary. If it's Hillary in the primaries versus a guy who I think is better and to the left of her, I'll vote for that guy. I'll just tell my wife I voted for Hillary.
What about it? I don't think Warren's going to run. I think she's made it pretty clear. They had to talk. The DNC had to talk her into running for the Senate.
Really?
Yeah. And
damn.
Yeah, I mean,
Sucks.
man, I'm the biggest Elizabeth Warren fan you'll find. I've read all three of her books. I
Hmm.
love her dearly. I wish she was the grandmother that I never had.
Right. Right.
And when her Labrador died in the 12th chapter of her book, I cried. It was like,
Wow.
yeah. So
See,
if,
things are getting different because a man can admit that now,
yeah.
that he cried reading an Elizabeth Warren novel without everybody questioning your masculinity.
Exactly. No, but I don't think she's going to run. But how do you feel about Bernie Sanders?
I love Bernie Sanders. He's got my vote. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's not, look, he's not as great as we make him out to be,
Hmm.
but he's still pretty great.
Do you believe the fact that he's outed himself as a socialist? That's just a death knell in this country.
Yeah, that's a no go.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
no-go.
No, he can't. I mean, also, he seems kind of Jewish. So, like, that's just not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to, like, elect somebody who's as Jewy as
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know, man. I mean, it was interesting. We're talking about change in this country, and you were talking about revolution,
Mhm.
and that's just like not how it works here. You know, we did have one really convulsive period in this country, obviously the Civil War,
Mhm.
but other than that, change has just been super incremental here. And I feel like in Europe, it would have been the same way if they hadn't had World War One and World War Two. I feel like the troops coming home from World War One and World War Two, and how much people sacrificed to make those wars work, gave them the power to kind of demand better conditions for their labor and for their health and things like that. And we haven't had that here for good or for ill, you know. And in one way we would have convulsive change is just everything goes to shit. And that's a possibility.
But that's the thing. In Europe, the left and the center parties never abandoned the working class. And that's when I look at the Democratic Party here, once Clinton came into power, he believed that he totally abandoned the working class. He embraced NAFTA. He deregulated Wall Street. He destroyed labor, collective bargaining. You name it. He believed that for Democrats to win, they had to sound like Republicans and they had to side up to Wall Street. So this is why I believe revolution is needed, because the Democrats have long ago abandoned the working class. And if you look at any election in the last 3 decades since Clinton was in power, nothing has really changed. You can point to Obamacare, which is basically a free market solution. He ran on universal health care, but realized once in office that the insurance lobby and the insurance industry is so powerful that Democrats are in the pocket of these guys that, we end up with these pro-corporate capitalistic solutions rather than real change.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, I
Yeah.
just got real sad. Yeah, Clinton was definitely one of the worst presidents who's remembered the most fondly. One of the reasons he's remembered so fondly, though, I think too, is because he was followed by the worst president of all time.
Yeah.
But I mean,
and he got chicks.
yeah, he's charismatic, man.
Yeah.
People love Bill. Bill just seems like a good guy, and it's hard to remember that he doesn't care about you. Really, he really doesn't actually care about you.
No.
It's just, I don't know, man. The thing with Clinton was, it was like that old saying about the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was making you believe he didn't exist, and that's what Clinton did.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who could smile like that and look you in the eye and feel your pain. I mean, he's probably the greatest politician from a pure political viewpoint that's ever walked the planet.
Yeah. I
Uh,
mean, he came from being like the governor of a nothing state to
Yeah.
president like that. I mean, he's pretty amazing.
yeah, and he rode the internet train. Or the internet boom train for all it's worth. But like all presidents, they're remembered better, with a rear vision mirror than they were in the time. I mean, everybody forgets the fact. I always like to point out that, Republicans like to malign President Carter for being the worst president in the 20th century. But his approval rating 6 months after he left office was 20 points higher than Reagan's approval rating 6 months after he left office. So, and this is what Republicans do. They just get in there, totally fuck things up for their corporate overlords, and then with the bet that Americans have short memories and their history will be glossed over.
Yeah, it's worked so far.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Reagan. Yeah, and it's funny because Republicans didn't used to be like this bad. It's really a before Reagan and an after Reagan mentality. There was a time when when Republicans had sort of legitimate principles that they stuck to about, and they were actually conservative about foreign policy. I mean, the word conservative doesn't mean anything anymore. I don't know. In one way, can you tell me that Republicans are conservative, other than I guess they don't want any social change, which is sort of a terrible thing to tie your, tie your boat to, or whatever. I don't know what, that's a terrible metaphor. Whatever they're tying to. They're just not, fiscally. They run up the deficit like Reagan did. They like Bush did. They get us into a huge amount of debt. They start these fucked up wars, and I don't know, man. I'm not sure like how they're conservative anymore. That all really started with Reagan. I mean, there's
exactly. Well, this is not the Republican. As everybody says, this is not the Republican Party of your grandfather or of your father. If you look at every Republican administration that came after FDR. Before Reagan, they preserved the New Deal. The social compact was something you didn't fuck with. We went through the Great Depression. We enacted social and economic reforms to protect the working class and middle class. And Eisenhower and Ford and Nixon protected that. In fact, the last liberal president, you could argue, was Nixon. And not because he had a social or a moral conscience, but he may have been the last U.S. president that was terrified of liberals.
Yeah. No, I could totally agree with that. I mean, he started the EPA. He started under Nixon. Can you imagine the Republicans doing anything like that now? I mean, voluntarily creating some sort of oversight of any kind?
Well, they're about to put a climate change denier as head of the Senate Environment Committee, and Jim Inhofe from Oklahoma.
That's so awesome. It's really, you just sort of have to sit back and enjoy the movie. We're living in a satire.
Well, for stand-up comics like you've basically got 2 years of unfettered material coming your way.
Oh, it's fantastic. Actually, being a stand-up comic has given me like a really sort of unique viewpoint on what America thinks about all this shit. And because when I first started working the road, it was like right around the time that Bush got into office, and jokes about George Bush were all like, he's stupid. And then they became about like, ooh, they got a lot darker by the end of the George Bush era, Sudden, no, he's not just stupid, he's dangerous.
He's evil.
And and then, you couldn't really get away with George Bush jokes, or, I'd do them, but the crowd would kind of go, oh, come on, right, after the war in Iraq. But after Katrina, boy, everybody in the country was like, fuck that guy. Like, you could do jokes in Wichita, Kansas, home of like, the abortion murderer in the Fred Phelps type people, they're from around there.
Yeah.
And man, they would just practically give you a standing ovation when you talked about what a bad president he was. And I think that's sort of like when things get bad in this country, because we do live in such an up and down bipolar country in terms of things getting bad, things getting good. Things are never just kind of coasting along. What's always made me feel okay is that from crisis comes change and comes things getting better. And, I think you could argue that Obama wouldn't have been elected without George Bush. And so what makes me feel good is that I know good change is around the corner, because there's always going to be a crisis. We're always going to have that here, Yeah. And we're a long way from those days being gone. And this Republicans, the Republicans basically having sort of a toothless power in terms of taking over the Senate might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Because like you said, they'll make an asshole of themselves, and next thing you know, people will be like, I'm not voting for these people.
Well, they're going. I think once they take control of the Senate, they're going to be like a 16-year-old with a blow-up doll for the first time. They're just going to they're going to try and fuck it way too hard. So now, America being as politically polarized as it is, what's the temperature like in the room when you tour and you do your acts and you move into political jokes?
I've learned how to tell them now so that they're not as polarizing. But I'm not sure, I think because maybe, I don't know, I think because George Bush isn't in, and some of the issues aren't quite as divisive as they used to be, or maybe they don't lend themselves to comedy as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's then I always I seem like I have a better reaction. I'd say the main stuff I talk about now is I talk about, like, I don't get on stage and say religion is stupid, because even if I might think that, it's just like a terrible way to get people to shut down.
Yeah.
So, especially for comedy, right?
Yeah.
So I'll get on and I'll talk about my relationship with religion and give it from my perspective, and say things like, man, I wish I could have faith,
Mm-hmm.
because they seem happy, and I wake up every night going, anybody? Hello, anyone? But so that, and then I'm not doing jokes about. I mean, what would I even do jokes about now under Obama? I mean, I definitely do some race related jokes, and I do a lot of jokes about sexuality, and I do that joke about things getting better because of shitty old people are dying, and for the most part, that joke does pretty well in some of the stupider places I play. And I don't even want to say like less educated, because with the internet now, everybody should be educated. These places are just stupid. I feel like there's your intellect and your ability to process sarcasm are like inextricably linked, right? And so a lot of my material is very sarcastic, or it's poking at you, but in a way that like I'm assuming that I'm joking when I poke at you. It can still be rough sledding with some of that stuff. I mean, even for me, like, that's a really optimistic joke about like things are getting better because shitty old people die. I don't know why some people think that's dark.
Rather inevitable. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying you should kill them. Just saying that when they die, it's not necessarily all bad.
Yeah. Now, this is an interesting segue. And touching on your religious faith or lack thereof. You're an atheist.
Well, and more of an agnostic than like a hard and firm atheist. Yep. I don't believe in a God the way religions do, but I'm open to the possibility that some cool shit is out there.
Cool, and that's
probably, go ahead.
Yeah, that's probably where I am. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I'm under fire from the new atheist community out there. I believe it's become a cult, and I'm going to be Andy Kindler is my next guest, and he has some strong feelings about on the same sort of issue. But I think fundamentalism is fundamentalism, whether it's religious or irreligious. No, it's always, I always like to hear someone say I'm agnostic, or if whatever.
Well, yeah, I have the knowledge to know I don't know. Like, and I may have a really good inkling. Ultimately, I'm just a person, and I don't know shit. So, yeah, and to me, atheists, I'm glad you said that, because to me, atheism isn't just another religion. If you're going to say, for sure, I know there's nothing, well, that's really you just believing there's nothing, because you can't prove it. Anything you can't prove, you just believe. So really, you have faith in nothing, which is sort of ironic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, well, my problem goes further than that. It's the whole creed of new atheism is to eradicate religion, and I know that's just wanting to eradicate what they believe are bad ideas, and there's plenty in religion that is bad ideas, but history has proven it's a short leap from wanting to eradicate an idea to wanting to eradicate the person who holds on to that idea.
I don't. I'm not sure how you can ever, like, I mean, to me, the idea of eradicating religion, it's worry about yourself, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like, just worry about yourself and worry about being a good person. And if religion gets out of control, we'll check it. But just wanting to eradicate it, that sounds like some shit Stalin would say.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did say. And now moving into that, and you've
not that I disagree with Stalin about everything.
No.
Right? He did say something about opiates, I think.
He loved them.
Yeah. Yes, he said religion. Was it him who said religion?
No, it was Marx. It was Marx.
Marx said religion is the opiate of the masses. Yeah. And boy, do I love to snort it.
If he had said Vicodin of the masses, then I was fully on board the communist train. Now, you're unique in your perspective. Well, I believe anyway that it's always interesting when Chris.
No, you're right. I am.
You are. I'll leave it there. Now, Christopher Hitchens, obviously, a hardcore militant atheist. You're agnostic, and what I find interesting is, and I hope you don't mind me bringing up your battle with cancer.
Oh yeah.
And cancer, I have never really embraced the whole idea of getting on board the Fight Cancer campaign. I've sort of been, apathetic whenever they're, fight for cancer awareness programs or Facebook causes that come along, mostly because, like everybody else on the planet, these things don't really touch you until you're affected personally by it.
Right.
And
Right.
one of my closest friends, and although I haven't seen in a number of years, and we spent a long time together, he was a champion Australian boxer, and he fought for the world title in 1994 against a fighter called Simon Brown, who was the world champion. He also fought Terry Norris in that period, and he's just one of life's gentle creatures. Well, he's just been diagnosed with a rare blood leukemia, and
Hmm.
it's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a fight. And I read your piece on cancer and your battle of cancer. I'm just going to read it out for the benefit of just a paragraph for the benefit of my listeners, and I'd like you to talk about that. And I thought this was really profound. And you write here, when I was diagnosed, I knew instinctively that I'd feel fear, that I'd feel sadness, and I'd feel great physical and emotional pain. What I didn't know was I'd feel massive amounts of guilt. Now let me explain. You see, when you get diagnosed, it doesn't change your life forever. The people closest to you are greatly, seriously affected by it too, and they may not always be handled this in the most thoughtful of ways. First of all, they don't want to lose you. They are terrified of losing you. They feel helpless and sad, and without even meaning to, they will let you know what your cancer is doing to them. This can lead to feelings of resentment and guilt toward them on top of everything else you're dealing with. Please do not let this happen. I repeat, do not ever let yourself get sucked into the feeling guilty about being sick. I did, and was one of the hardest parts of my battle. In fact, it turned out to be the greatest emotional foe. I've never heard anyone phrase the battle of cancer in that way. I thought that was touching, and
Thanks, man.
and it's relevant to what a friend is going through. So yeah, you speak to that a little bit. You feeling guilty? I've never heard anyone say they felt guilty for that.
Yeah, and boy, until you go through it, man, like, and I went through it. I was 27
Hmm.
to 29. I was fighting it, and um, you don't like you just see the movies where everybody rallies around you. You're right, or rallies around the cancer patient,
Yep.
and you don't see like how fucked up it can get when you're under the threat of death. People get mad at you because you might die, or you personally, especially like a big strong guy who's like a fighter, he's going to feel like he let people down, or people around you like flying into just uber want to help you mode, and they're just clearly like stressed out, and they can't handle it, so they're just fucking neurotic all the time and anxious, and you just feel like god, basically you feel like my illness has messed up everyone's life. And what a waste, because you didn't choose it, and of course it's not that easy, because we feel guilty about a lot of things we didn't choose. I mean,
Hmm.
I saw Goodwill Hunting, uh
Yep.
right? It's not your fault, Will, it's not your fault.
Yeah, I cried in that part too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So I guess that was just one of the deeper understandings I had, and sometimes I don't even know these things until I write about them, because I don't like to think about it.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
a really bummer part of my life.
Yeah. And so how long was this battle? Were you battling lymphoma
And
for?
also, I should say, I resist thinking about things like that might make me grow as a person, which is something I resist at all costs. So, I fought it. I got diagnosed when I was 27, just
Right.
about to turn 28. And then I got out of the hospital in September when I was 29 of the following year. So I wasn't in that hospital the whole time, but yeah. And also,
Yeah.
I had just started writing on my first TV show. I just got my first professional writing job on a TV show. Started on a Monday, got diagnosed on a Tuesday. Great timing.
Wow. God, talk about
Yeah.
ecstasy and agony.
Oh
Yeah.
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 More just like agony, really, because I knew I was like getting the results of the biopsy, and
Yeah.
it's like, I just made sure I really enjoyed that Monday.
Man, I got to tell you, the C word, cancer, is my greatest fear. And my wife is she believes I'm, obsessed by it. I drink green tea like it's going out of fashion. I eat acai like that's going to run out
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow. I try to stay away from processed foods. We try to eat as organically as we possibly can. it's such a scare. I love living so much. I don't believe in an afterlife. I believe this is the one life we're being given. I just can't accept that my life is going to be over because I love living. And to be diagnosed with cancer would just be so unimaginably terrifying. I can't even put words on it.
I think the main thing it did for me once obviously the fear lasted a long time, and then I got told I had 40% chance to live 5 years, so it kept on after I was out of the hospital and quote done with treatment. I had the fear, and in fact I'm going to see a doctor about PTSD now to follow up, because anytime you're under threat of mortality for a long time, even if it's just one big instance, you can almost die once and get PTSD from it. If you almost die every day for 5 years, boy, that can be a motherfucker. So I'm like on medication for it and everything. Wow. And that's something that's not talked about a lot, is how cancer survivors, a lot of them have PTSD. Shit, I don't know. I got off on a tangent about PTSD. Cancer has taken away my ability to focus. I don't know. I lost my focus for a second. I figured I'd blame cancer.
I'll try.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No. I'll try and jot your train of thought then, because that's interesting. I've never heard the link between cancer and PTSD. And you're right. I mean, anybody who's exposed in a war zone or where their physical well-being is under threat for long periods of time, that's where you do suffer PTSD, because you're in a heightened emotional state for a lengthy period of time. That's why people have emotional meltdowns at work.
That's right.
These currency traders, these forex traders, which don't sleep, and they're constantly in this emotional high, and then they have these massive crashes, which is basically what that is.
Well, here it is, like in actual or threatened violence or death. You can either have direct exposure or witness in person. While you're in a hospital ward for months like I was, where you're watching people die of cancer all around you, that can be kind of terrifying. Like one day on that would fuck you up, let alone staying there every day, like sleeping there for 30 days. Direct exposure. I mean, I'm just quoting from like this thing I have on my desk, because I've just been kind of like sort of taking charge of this in my life. Because before I would just like go to see the doctor for depression and stuff until I was like, maybe I have this shit. And then I talked to my shrink about it. And no, I'm not crazy. We should all have shrinks. Fuck you if you don't have a shrink. And it says, actual or threatened death is a big one. And then I would imagine that most cancer patients have stuff like this, like you have like persistent and negative beliefs and expectations about yourself, distorted blame for yourself or others, negative trauma related syndrome, and then diminished interest in stuff that you used to enjoy, man. I mean, I went through all of that and still fight all of that, and I didn't used to be like that, and that's just one of those things. And so when people always talk about like cancer is the greatest thing that ever happened to me, I always want to go, well, what was your life like before? Were you constantly getting like raped by hyenas? Like that cancer was a turning point from you that marked only whoa, this is so great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I learned anything from cancer, and I don't think cancer taught me anything. I think that any kind of terrible situation can reveal strength in you that you didn't know you possessed, because you get through it and you're all right, I got that shit. And so that's what it did for me, but it didn't I didn't learn anything from it.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Did I lose you?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, just for a second. Yeah, no, I mean, I didn't learn any, I definitely learned things about like getting sick and stuff like that, but it's not like, oh man, I survived cancer, I'm the bravest person ever, and oh my God, I'm going to go climb Mount Everest. I mean, my dreams were the same, my goals were the same, although I had some like pretty ballsy dreams and goals. And I mean, I wanted to make a living in entertainment. That's pretty that's the same as climbing Mount Everest. So, I had that before.
Yeah, and to finish on a lighter note, I mean, I think that's utterly not to dismiss what you just said. I think that's absolutely enlightening. But and career-wise at the moment, where is your focus? Is it in stand-up? Is it in television?
It's in both. I'm waiting to hear back from a couple shows. Yep. And then I'm in development on another show. So you're either like on a show or you're in development of a show. Basically, it's like everything in show business. It's like terrible news, okay news, oh shit, great news. Let's hope there's no more terrible news for a while. And then in the meantime of all that, while all that's going on, you just make a living. So like this weekend, I'm going to go to Vancouver. I'll be performing at the Comedy Mix there. I got 5 shows. And then next week, I'm in Vegas all week. So I'm just, I leave a very blessed life. I get to do what I love for a living. And I got 2 great kids. And tonight, I'm going to go see Lucinda Williams. So, it's good.
Mate, that's
by the way, I read your Wikipedia page and it says you're an atheist. So you may want to, it says devout atheist too, which I think is hysterical.
I know. Well, I just recently came out and renounced my new atheism because there's good old-fashioned vanilla atheism, which is where I am at. I experienced a terrorist attack in Bali in 2005, and that was sort of an awakening, which pushed me into the I consumed Chris Hitchens, I consumed Richard Dawkins, I consumed Sam Harris, and I went, that's it. All the world's problems come down to religion. That's it. One word answer. And then I embrace the ideology. And in the last couple of years, once you look deeper into these things, life is more complex than bumper slogans. You have to look into the geopolitical understandings. You have to look into cultural and the history, and certainly our interference in these regions. And I've come to the conclusion that I'm not a new atheist, because a new atheist wants to eradicate religion. I lived in Indonesia for 10 years, the world's largest Muslim country. I love the religion there. I would hate to take away, the cultural history that Islam has brought to Indonesia. At the risk of saying some of my best friends are Muslims. Well, some of my best friends are Muslim, and they really, like Ben Affleck said, they really are no different to you and I. They just want to take the kids to school and make sandwiches and live a good life and do the best by their neighbors and get through the best that they can. But this very hostile fundamental idea of eradicating religion, which was where admittedly I was a few years ago, is certainly not where I am today. So I probably need to update my Wikipedia page.
Well, I totally agree with you. And boy, if you think about this, like what's funny to me is my friends who are always putting down religion, they always have like a bong in their mouth, right? And they're like, oh man, religion's a crutch. Oh really? Really?
Yeah.
Well, good thing I spoke to you, man who needs nothing to get through the night.
A man who just put a Vicodin up his ass as a suppository.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. The guy with the 8 Xanax prescriptions in different states. Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of my atheist friends, they like smoke pot every fucking day and they go, religion, I don't need it. Yeah. You're right, because you're on drugs.
Yeah, and you're on Facebook 24/7.
Yeah, totally. Everything's a drug, man. Everything helps you get through. It's just whether or not you abuse it, right? I got no problem with people who smoke pot occasionally, just like I got no problem who use Christianity for the right reasons. But it's like you said, man. Any kind of fundamentalism is a bad kind of fundamentalism.
Mate, whatever you do in the privacy of your own harm and it doesn't harm others and involves willing, accomplices, knock yourself out. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, or at least a safe word. Right.
My safe word is don't stop.
Right.
That's two words.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
So, dude, it's been awesome having you on, Sean, and finally we got to chat. So, to tell my audience where they can find you, where they can learn more about you, etc. This is your 30-second plug.
SeanKent.com, Facebook.com, comedian Sean Kent, Twitter @Sean Kent, although I've not been active on Twitter for a while. I've been actively sort of trying to not be active on Twitter, so I don't know why I would tell you to follow me on there, because I probably won't do much. Mostly what you can do is go to my Facebook page, because I really do interact a lot on there, and I post stuff. And come see me live, man, because, TV or no TV, my love is stand-up, and it's what I poured my heart and soul into it. So if you want to come see somebody do something they've tried their whole life to get good at, come watch me do comedy.
Mate, I desperately want to see you live. I've watched all your YouTube stuff. I think you're fantastic. I'm a huge fan. I've loved you for a long time, and mate, this has been a career high just having a chat with you. So, mate.
Oh, thank you very much, man. Thank you. I've read a couple of your books. I haven't read all of them, but I've read a couple of them, and I think they're fucking great. So, all right.
Thanks,
well,
Sean.
Thanks, CJ.
Good on you, mate. Great having you on, and all the best.
You too. Bye.
Thanks, matey. Bye-bye.